I'm not sure what brought you here today. Perhaps your child's a really fussy eater and it drives you completely around the twist. Maybe they're suffering from anxiety issues, maybe that you have speech issues, perhaps they're non-verbal, maybe they're having concentration issues at school, ADHD problems, or we're having toileting problems, can be well into their teens, might be socialisation that you're concerned about. I know something that used to upset me a lot was when people would be handing out birthday invitations to every other child in the class but mine. That was quite distressing for me. Things like the anxiety, maybe your child's really anxious, suffering from anxiety or depression. Perhaps they've got sleep issues. We are very well versed with these problems, and I have 2 children of my own on the spectrum, and I've spent many years tackling each and every one of these issues. My name is Dr. Heather Way, and I am the founding director of the Australian Centre for Genomic Analysis. Lots of people ask me, what exactly is it that you do there to help children on the autism spectrum? And I thought, well, you know what, I should make a video and explain it to people just briefly. So, welcome, thank you for joining me, and you can ask questions at the end, and hopefully I'll answer them for you through the video. So what we do know is, at this point, with the research to hand, is that autism is a combination of having genetic predispositions that may have been in your family line for hundreds and hundreds of years, but they weren't triggered. And now we have a lot of environmental triggers. So there's all sorts of problems with toxic chemicals in the environment now that weren't around, for instance, when I was a child. So we have a much higher autism rate now than we did 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And the good news is that we can use a new science called Nutrigenomics to help reverse some of these issues that we're seeing epigenetically. So my background is in molecular pathology. My PhD was in genetics. And so when Nutrigenomics came along, I got very excited because it's the use of food, nutrition, to turn our genes on and off. So I've been working with a company to work out autism-associated genes and all the genes that can be switched on and off with food so that we can action them, and we figured out ways that we can help the children. We can turn on the genes that aren't working properly. It's very exciting work. So I'd like to give you a brief overview and try and explain it. So this is a very stylised diagram of DNA, and basically you might remember back to high school maths, A's and T's stick together and G's and C's stick together, biology, sorry. And if it's like that, it's good. But sometimes some of the DNA sticks together incorrectly, and it can be called single nucleotide polymorphisms or mutations. And when we look at the DNA, which is just from a cheek swab, just a simple saliva swab, so there's no invasive testing, we don't need blood, just need a little swab. The results come back and look a little bit like this. So when we see a yellow, it's a bit like the yellow in the traffic light. Slow down and have a look. One of the base pairs is wrong. And if they're both wrong, it'll come back with a red colour code to let us know that there's a full mutation there and we need to do something. So the sorts of things that come back, we've got hundreds of genes on our dedicated autism panel that I've been building over the years. And some of the more common things are like inflammation, for instance. Here, this is interleukin is an inflammation marker. So the 3 things, what I've narrowed it down to, having done this for quite some time now, having recovered both my children using this protocol, what I was able to figure out was that I'd like to use an analogy of a house on fire. These kids are very inflamed, so it's as if it's like a burning house. And people come into the clinic and they sort of want a fix. They just sort of want a magic pill that will fix it. And so they're effectively trying to move a new couch into a burning house. And that's not sensible. We have to put the fire out first. Once we've put the fire out, so we reduce the inflammation, then we can start to work on detoxifying, which is another big problem for these children on the spectrum. They cannot detoxify toxic chemicals very well. So I liken that to sort of cleaning out the house, detoxifying, getting all the rubbish out. That's important. And then once we've done that, once the fire's out, we've cleaned out all the rubbish, then we can move in all of the new furniture. So this is a bit what it looks like, just to give you an idea. This is a normal brain over here where the brain's right up against the skull. And this is a picture of a child with autism. And you can see there's this clear fluid layer above the brain, between the brain and the skull. It's an increased axial fluid layer. That's inflammation. When you twist your ankle, it puffs up and it's all puffy and fluid. It's the same thing. It's just this sort of inflammation. So it's really important that we bring down that inflammation, and that's going to help them when they've got learning difficulties, the cognitive difficulties, depression, anxiety, speech issues. All of those things can be improved by bringing down the inflammation. All of this we do with food. So that's phase one, putting out the fire. Phase two is where we detoxify, as I was saying, getting all the junk out. All of this will really help with their ASD symptoms, that irritability, the repetitive behaviours, the kids that have got OCD type behaviours and cognitive concentration issues at school and so on. So it's very important that we turn their detoxification pathway back on so that they can cope better with the artificial colours and flavours and preservatives and herbicides and pesticides and BPAs, and it just goes on and on, the things that are in our environment now that were not in the environment 100 years ago. These are the kids that don't manage those things. So when we turn those genes back on, they can cope better in our environment. Now the next step is the rebuilding. This is a bit that everybody wants to rush into, but we have to do the first two first. This is where we can rebalance the vitamins. So we look at vitamin receptors, the genes for calcium channeling, all those sorts of things. We look at genes for oxytocin, which helps with socialisation. We look at the neurotransmitters like GABA, which helps with anxiety and sort of calming and mood stabilisation. Melatonin genes to help with their sleep. The speech genes, sensory genes, the zinc and copper base ratios and all of those things. So we've got all the zinc copper genes in. So we're looking at all of those things, and just bear in mind that we can turn them on or off using food, just changing the diet. It's very, very simple, and we'll teach you how to well, help you, let's put it that way, to help your child to eat. This is what's important, because really food is medicine. So I'll just give you one example. Broccoli sprouts, for instance, have been proven beyond any shadow of a doubt to help with autism. There's many, many research papers out about this now, how they help to change gene expression, to bring on speech, increase socialisation, the sensory issues. They help with turning on the detoxification genes. They help to bring down the inflammation genes. It helps to turn on the vitamin D receptors. Amazing things happen when we can integrate just this simple food into the diet, and that's what we want to help you with. So what we do in the centre, if I can try and explain it, I'm using more than just the gene testing. That is a really important part of what we do. We are a sequencing centre after all, but it's more than that. We've got the gene test, which is the saliva, but just because you have a mutation doesn't mean it's being expressed, and we don't treat just individual mutations. We're treating the body as a whole. So we want to look at the big picture. Where are the main areas of concern, and how do we address each of those areas of concern? Not one snip in isolation. Lots of people come in worried sick about methylation. It's the least of your worries. There's so much more going on than just that. We've got to treat the whole person. So we also look at oats testing, organic acid testing, which gives us an idea of which genes are actually expressing at the time, which is very important. We do a lot of work with rebalancing body chemistry, so there's some urine testing, and something that's just super important with autism is getting the gut right. Most of these children come in with GI issues, and so it's very important that we get that gut-brain axis right, so we sequence the microbiome as well. Now, when I talk about using food, the very common thing that people say is, oh, but you know, Johnny won't eat. Yes, I know. I had two of my own on the spectrum, if you remember. So one of mine we used to joke was breatharian. He just wouldn't eat anything. Drove me to distraction as a nutritionist. That was just crazy. So I have developed a program. It took years and years and years and years developing this and honing this and helping people. So we will actually help you to teach a child in a fun way how to eat, so that then we can integrate the new foods. We don't use any drugs. Everything we do is natural, food-based interventions that are proven scientifically to work. We have enormous support for going gluten-free and dairy-free. It's a massive part of the program. We know now unequivocally that gluten and dairy will epigenetically downregulate methylation. They'll make that worse. They make detoxification worse. They make it harder for the child to detoxify, and they already have trouble there. They make it more oxidative stress. These kids have trouble with carbohydrate digestion. We'll show you the genes for that. They have this capacity, really unusual capacity, to turn gluten into something called glutamorphine. You hear the word morphine, it's alarming. And the same with casein. They can turn milk or yogurt, the cheese, all these things that they love, they turn that into casomorphines. So when you hear the word morphine, they're getting like a little drug hit. So they become addicted to both gluten and dairy, which is why people come in saying all they'll eat is toast, milkshakes, chicken nuggets. They like lots of cereals, they like biscuits, they like toast bread, pasta, that sort of thing. They love all this white food, and usually it's gluten-based and dairy-based because they're actually getting a morphine hit from it. So it's very, very important that we gradually introduce some new foods into their diet as we very gradually reduce the amount of gluten and dairy in their diet to remove that morphine issue. Because that, of course, you hear morphine, it's definitely going to be affecting them in their concentration and so on at school. So we don't go cold turkey. We support you every step of that journey to just gradually remove it from their diet. Now, the other thing, as I was saying, we've got to look at their gut. So most of the kids that come in are at the constipated end with autism. It's incredibly common, but there's some down this end as well. So we're aiming to get the right balance of flora. So I've just finished a big study with an Australian company where we were looking at the autism microbiome and its relationship with IBS. And you might not be able to see it very clearly, but there's a big circle over here of the controls, the normal gut, and here we have all the ASD, IBS gut over here. Very, very different gut. So there's a lot of work that we can do, a lot of things that we can do to help rebalance their gut, and that's what we need to do as well. It's very important. Then the next step is that we then do some immunotherapy. So we've got a plate on the left with the neurons that aren't connecting. This is very common in autism, particularly when the children aren't speaking. And then when we add the immunotherapy, and there's lots of different types that we can do. There's sprays, there's capsules, there's yogurts, there's all sorts that are made not on dairy. And you can see that the neurons are starting to connect. So they regrow, they reconnect, and then the children usually start to speak. So we have some brilliant success with that. So I just wanted to show very briefly some before and after blood work that we did back in 2012 when we were proving the concept of this work. And that's what the basis of this whole clinic is. When I did this study, this is called the Autism Health Initiative, an Australian initiative, and we've proven that it worked, and so I decided, I need to open a clinic. I was able to recover my 2 sons, and I thought, okay, I need to roll this out to everybody else. And in that time I've been honing and developing and building a new dedicated autism gene panel, which I'm just hugely excited about. It's not available anywhere else in the world. I made it. So what we can show is that in this top one is oxidative stress, and the kids were up at the top here. They were very highly stressed. And then after 3 months, they were coming down into the normal range. So this is just 3 months. The program that we like to run is 6 to 8 months. And of course, we encourage you to keep going. So you'll just keep getting more and more benefits the longer you keep going with this. The vitamin D usually is very low in these children, so we're able to get it up into the normal range in just 3 months by fixing the vitamin receptor. It's a genetic issue. It's not a matter of jamming more vitamin D in. We have to turn the receptor on so that they can receive the vitamin D. Things like this is an inflammatory marker, so one of the ones that made that swelling on the brain. So it's up at the high end, it's up around 7. We got it down to 4 after 3 months, so getting rid of all that fluid on the brain. So the main areas that we've just got some huge improvements, when you look at ATEC scores, so autism scores in Australia, the higher the score, the more autistic the child. So this is the average across the 200 children. So when you add all of these together, it comes out at 100. And so then you can see that before they were having a lot of troubles with speech, sociability, sensory issues, so too bright, too tight, too loud, too whatever, and behaviour, of course, all of the meltdowns and tantrums and so on. And so after is over here, all 200 of the children came in under 10, so they were considered recovered, which is really exciting. It works incredibly well. I just want to show a little clip. We've popped a little face over to just protect his privacy. This little chap came in non-verbal, had a very loud tick because he was also suffering with pandas, and so he wasn't able to attend school. You'll see why in a moment when I play it. He was very frustrated, crying all the time, pretty upset little chook. And they've agreed for us to share the video, but we still felt that we'd like to protect his privacy, so I'll just play it for you. And it goes for a few seconds. So you can see that vocal tick, that was just constant. And so he wasn't able to attend school, he couldn't write, he couldn't read, and so it was a pretty miserable existence when he came in. He was very unhappy. So having done the program, and all the immunotherapy and all the rest of it, you'll see in a moment he's playing a game with his mum, which they've named the Tickle game. So she just tickles him and he's giggling away. And he's starting to talk now. The tick is completely gone, and you'll hear a little word that he says. It sounds a little bit like tiger, but it's his attempt at saying tickle. So it was the first word he said, and he's getting more and more words. The speech therapist can now work with him. What we're finding is that once we fix the genes, then all those other therapists get a lot more bang for your buck. You can take them back to your speech therapist and your OT and so on, because that inflammation on the brain's gone down. They're able to concentrate, they can hear the instructions, they can process the instructions better, and you'll get much more progress. So with my own son, I'd had 7 years of speech therapy. He was, he was non-verbal in nappy still at 7. And having done this process, just 3 months later, I had him talking and reading and writing, which I had been told was just impossible, that he would never read or write or talk or walk, and I should put him in a home and forget about him. That was not for me. So I'll just play the clip for this little man, and you get an idea. The tick's completely gone. So saying tickle, tickle. And he's got heaps of words now, and he's able to be at school, and it's really exciting. So bit by bit, we're helping to bring the children to their full potential, whatever that might be, by helping to turn their genes back on and modulate the immune system and regulate their gut. So I hope that was helpful. Hopefully you can see that when fixing the gut, getting that diet right, and getting the DNA right, that's how we're getting the results. So I'm really glad that you're able to tune in. Thanks for your time, and we're more than happy to answer any questions, and hope that we can help you and your beautiful family. Thanks very much. Bye.